Well, I'm going to start this off with a dream I had. And everything I'm about to tell you guys is approved by pastors, so. And I'm also going to talk. I'm going to have like maybe a 1-second pause after I talk so that Pastor Eugene can translate. So, last Thursday, I went to sleep. Surprise. And I had a dream. And the dream went like this. I was dozing off, and in my dream, I was also dozing off. Kind of weird, I know. So I was dozing off, and let me pull up my notes just to make sure I got everything right. So this is, I'm going to reference H.D. Ellen in this dream because God is confirming that she's also, she was raised up as head deacon. And then my wife's also going to be referenced in this too. So I was laying down and dozing off, and then all of a sudden it's like I got a call, like a phone call, but it wasn't. It's like I knew somebody was calling me, and it was H.D. Ellen. And so I answered it, even though it wasn't my phone. It was like telepathically. It was weird. And so I answered the phone, and immediately my wife turned over on the bed like this. She was sleeping in the dream. She turned over and opened her mouth, and H.D. Ellen's voice was coming through my wife's mouth. And she said, "I just talked to pastors, and they said to tell you the message that God has for you." So this is right around the time that they got raised up. This was the weekend, or this was like a couple days before they got ordained. So that's why she's in that dream, to confirm that. And it's so weird because in the dream, I was awake, but I wasn't awake. I was like dozing off. So it was so real. And right after she said, "I just talked to pastors," that sentence, then it's like I knew God was speaking in that exact moment. And he said this. He said, and in this tone, he said, "What, were you not afraid?" I'll say it again. God spoke and he said, "What, were you not afraid?" And instantly, I was just like struck with terror. Like, I don't know, I'm going to reference a couple verses, but in the Bible, people talk about they felt like when they seen God, they felt like they wanted to die. You know, let's pull up a couple of those. Let's go to let's skip that. Let's just go to Isaiah 6. Scroll down. And keep going down. Okay, so Isaiah has a vision of God, and he says in verse 5, "Oh no, I will be destroyed. I am not pure enough to speak to God, and I live among people who are not pure enough to speak to him. But I have seen the King, the Lord all-powerful." And let's go to the next version. Also verse 5. "Then I said, my doom is sealed, for I am a foul-mouthed sinner, a member of a sinful, foul-mouthed race. And I have looked upon the King, the Lord of heaven's armies." And let's actually go back to the second tab. There's one more verse I want to reference. Okay, the fourth one where it says 22, "And Manoah said," so this was, they had seen, the angel of the Lord had come to Manoah, and they had seen God, or they seen the angel of the Lord Oh, I just read this. I can't remember off the top of my head. But the angel of the Lord said, angel of the Lord said, your family's gonna have a baby, this and that, right? And Manoah was like, we're gonna die because we've seen God, right? And we've read so many scriptures like this, right? But until you experience something, what I'm talking about, there's just no way to understand. Like even today, even the past week, I felt like I felt very humbled in like a very, I don't want to say like scared way, but kind of like a scared way, like, oh my gosh, like it gives you a different perspective on, who we're actually serving here. This isn't just some like, corporate boss, some a random manager at some, this is a great king, and we have to understand this. And that's the name of my sermon is, do you know who you're serving? Okay, now I'm going to continue with the rest of my dream here. So, remember God said, he said, what, were you not afraid? And in that moment, in my dream, I had thought of that post that Pastor Eugene had posted that same day, and it was that post about King Saul. And in the dream, I was like nothing came specifically to my mind of like, what was it, like, what am I afraid? Like in a sense, like I didn't know what I had done in the dream, like what was the act I had committed. But at the same time, it was like, it didn't matter. Like, it was like God was asking me a question, and it was like, I couldn't even, it didn't, the thought to even speak, it didn't even enter into my mind. It was just like, you literally I felt like I just wanted to die. Like, I just felt like there's no point of me living anymore. I just felt like I was just, what was another verse in here? Right here, 17, this one on the bottom. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. That's how I felt. I felt dead. So I'll continue. So as soon as he said, what, were you not afraid? I was very afraid in that moment. And it was like I knew that something was coming next. Like he was about to say something next, and I knew it was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to get judged, like in the dream. And so I started screaming, no, 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 like for my, like if somebody had a gun to my head and I was just like fearing for my life, that I was screaming like that, no, no, no. And like it was the most scared I had ever been in a dream. Even when I woke up, I've never been that scared in my entire life. Nothing even comes close to it. And then he cut me off in the middle of my no, and he said, Deuteronomy 6, 1 through 8, and like he sounded like he was going to say 8, and then the dream ended. And so now I'm going to read Deuteronomy 6. So let's go ahead and go to Deuteronomy 6. Okay, so this is right after Moses gives them the 10 Commandments. That was in Deuteronomy 5. And so we're in chapter 6 now. And when he says these are the commands, the laws, he's talking about the 10 Commandments. But we all know it's not just the 10 Commandments in itself. It's the contract that we have with God, right? It's these rules, these laws, right? This is the contract that we have with God, all of us. It applies to today. It's not just the ancient 10 Commandments. It's the contract, the vows that we have with God, what we say we're going to do for God, what our contract says, we owe God this because God bought us with a heavy price, right? These are the laws and rules that we're talking about. Deuteronomy 6. And I'm going to read this as about 20 verses, but I'm not about to skip a verse in this thing. These are the commands, the laws, and the rules that the Lord your God told me to teach you. Obey these laws in the land that you are entering to live in. You and your descendants must respect the Lord your God as long as you live. You must obey all his laws and commands that I give you. If you do this, you will have a long life in that new land. Israelites, listen carefully and obey these laws. Then everything will be fine with you. You will have many children, and you will get filled with many good things, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, promised. So when this was probably like 4 in the morning when I had this dream. I couldn't even go back to sleep, and I was just like drenched in sweat. So I went to the bathroom, and I was just standing there in the bathroom, and I was like, I laid down in bed for a moment, and it's like the verse, Deuteronomy 6. I was like, I just can't go back to sleep. I have to know what Deuteronomy 6 is. So I went to the bathroom, and I was like standing in the bathroom in the pitch black, and I'm reading Deuteronomy 6, and I'm thinking like, oh my gosh. And what I kind of felt from this is like, and I talked to Pastor about it because he could see that I was a little white in the face. And he basically said it's like God had come to him before in the past, and God had told him, don't become prideful, don't become corrupted, don't become deceived. And at the time, Pastor Steve was like, God, why are you telling me this? Like, am I doing something wrong? Like in this moment, like what's going on? And he said that God never answered him, and he hasn't answered to this day. And sometimes he was saying that sometimes God has to remind us of these things to keep us humble and in check. And so we have these experiences, and we know no matter how high God takes us, we know who we are, we know where we came from, we know who we're serving. And this verse, I'm going to keep reading, but this chapter is about, it's basically the premise of the chapter is, hey, I'm going to take you here, but don't forget about me. I'm going to bless you, but remember what I told you. Right? It's like when a parent is like, yeah, you can go out tonight with your friends, but remember what I told you. Be careful. Right? It's like that. It's like that forewarning that we know it's very easy to actually not be careful, and we know the pitfalls that we can fall into. But our parents tell us, be careful, right? And this is the premise of that verse here. Verse 4, listen, people of Israel, the Lord is our God. The Lord is the only God. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. Always remember these commands that I give you today. Be sure to teach them to your children. Talk about these commands when you sit in your house and when you walk on the road. Talk about them when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them on your hands and wear them on your foreheads to help you remember my teachings. Write them on the doorposts of your houses and on your gates. The Lord your God made a promise to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He promised to give you this land, and he will give it to you. He will give you great and rich cities that you did not build. He will give you houses full of good things that you did not put there. He will give you wells that you did not dig. He will give you vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant, and you will have plenty to eat. So God's like, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to take care of you. This land is going to be great. But remember what I told you. But be careful. See? But be careful. Don't forget the Lord. And I just want to stop at this before I go any further. I think as members, as Christians, especially in this fire church, we forget what it means to forget God. I'll say that again. We forget what it means to forget God, right? So we feel like, hey, you know what? I'm so we're fed so well here spiritually. We're always around God. We're always we're always under the cover of God. I come here, we come here, whether it's during prayer or on the weekend, you as a person could be saying, I'm seeing God 3 to 7 days a week at his physical house, whereas other people only go once a week out there in the world. And so in our minds, we could justify, well, obviously I have a great relationship with God. Obviously, I'm spending time with God, right? Obviously, I'm not forgetting God. But it's so easy to forget God. It's very easy. Because all it takes is habits are built off of like small routines, right? So let's say Pastor brings up this example 1,000 times. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to pray today because, I'm busy or blah, 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 this and that, or, I'm tired. I'm not going to pray today. I'll take a break, but I'll get back at it tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, you say the same thing. The next day comes, you get back into prayer. Okay, great, I'm back in the groove. And then you pray for a couple days. And then next week happens, and then now that goes, instead of 2 days missed, now we're talking 3 days missed. And the week after that, it's 4. And then the week after that, it's still 4 days missed, but we pray less time. And there's this little gap that starts forming that we don't think is a big deal because we're still spending time with God, right? We're still praying most days, right? I'm still reading like a chapter, right? I still come to church, right? But that's not what God's talking about when he's saying, don't forget the Lord. It's like when God says in the Bible, he says, you've gone so far from me. And the people are like, what do you mean we've gone so far from you? That could be like when you think of those people, think about us sitting in here right now. Think about how often you come to church, how many hours you spend here. And if God were to ask you a question like that, our answer could so easily be, what are you talking about? I'm always here. Right? And that's when God says, don't forget the Lord. He's talking to people like us who are literally being led by the pillar of fire, are under Moses, are continuously being taught God's laws, have commands from heaven coming down to teach the people, right? Fresh revelation. And God's saying, don't forget me. So this applies to people just like us, who are, in our minds, we're totally entrenched in the presence of God multiple days a week. But you can't define that because that definition is what God defines, right? We can't define our relationship with God. We have to go by God's standard, like Pastor says all the time. How do you love? Well, we have to love on God's standard, not my standard of love based off 1 day a week Christian out there in the world, right? We have to set our standard to God, and that way we're never going to reach God because we're not God. We're not perfect. And what that does, because God is so great and because he's such a great king, we could never even reach close to God. So it always keeps us in striving mode. It always keeps us in working mode. It always keeps us in a humble mindset. Man, I got so much to work on. But if I'm comparing myself with, a 1 day a week Christian, or, some friends that I work with at my job and they're cussing or listening to worldly music, well, of course our standard is going to be higher. That's because it's the wrong standard. So we have to compare our standard to God's standard. And we have to know who we're serving. And I think, straight up, that the people that are willing to test the line, and the people that are willing to come against the pastors willfully, and the people that just flat out don't want to obey just because, for the sake of not obeying, because they're pissed or whatever, you have not met God. I'm telling you right now. Don't even say that you can hear God or that you know the Bible. You don't hear God. You don't know the Bible, because if you did, you would know who you're serving. And we are serving God through a monarchy that God has set up, right? We have God himself, Jesus, flows down through Pastor Kim. Pastor Kim flows down to the branches. We are within those branches and under those branches, right? So we have to be so careful. Like, I want you guys to take obedience more seriously, because the foundation of your life is based now. It's now, right? Just like you see this large building here, right? It looks nice. It was renovated, but nobody cared when there was just all land here, and there was a bunch of rocks and worms and beetles and cockroaches crawling along the ground for 20 years or however long there wasn't any structures here. And then the foundation gets laid, and they're digging it out. Right, I remember working at Zoom, and they were building a new Adobe building right across the street, and they broke ground, and I'm not even kidding. They probably dug down like 100 feet, like just like so far down, just like not more than 100 feet. It was just like you could look down and be like, whoa, if I jump off that, I'm probably gonna die. They dug all the way down, and then they started putting cement in these like wire poles, and it was everything for the foundation. It didn't look sexy. It didn't look, it's a nice building with all these lights. It was everything that was just so unappealing in it, but that is the most important part of the building. And so the times that you guys have now to train, whether it's with people, whether it's at your job, the stuff that seems, in your mind, it seems dumb. Right? In your mind, it seems dumb and trivial, but it's the most important thing that sets you up for your future. And hold on, I just randomly thought of something here. So I was reading this verse the other day, and we know this, but it basically talks about in Thessalonians, the people are going to come, or Satan's going to come, and it's going to try to use every kind of evil to make people lost, to forget God, basically. And it says they're lost because they refuse to be saved. So in reality, as we know, it's either we want to move forward or we don't. And if we don't want to move forward, we know in our heart what's wrong. We know the laws that are written on our hearts. We know in our spirit what we need to do. Our conscience, it's screaming at us, don't do that, or you need to do this. But we ignore it, right? So that in a sense is refusing to be saved. It's refusing God's help, refusing God's salvation, right? God wants to enfold his salvation before us, but it's almost like God wants to flip the page, and we're like, no, God, no, you can't, don't flip that page. And God wants to take us to the next season of our life, and we got our hand on the paper. We're like, nope. And God's like, just let go, relax, remove your death grip. Let's go we can do this. He's trying to be a good, loving God to us, but we don't want to get to a point where we have to face God in a kind of manner like in the dream I experienced. I'm telling you, it's so scary. And I can't even imagine like when people die and they go to the throne room of God, and God tells them, remember Pastor Kim was saying, they go up there, and then God tells them, where's your ticket? right? Where's your ticket? And the people are like, what do you mean? What ticket? The ticket to enter heaven. Where's your ticket? They're like demanding, give me the ticket now. And they're so afraid. And then God's like, hell, right? I can't even imagine the fear, and I don't even think that word does it justice. It's just like hearing God speak in that, and even in that sense is just like, it's just death itself. Like you're like so scared, like this God is so great. I don't even care how I lived my life before. All that matters is God is speaking to me right now, and I better listen. That's like everything else in your mind is just completely erased. I can't even imagine how horrible that feels for those people. Even King Saul, like I can't imagine, like in the Bible, all we see is just words written, right? But when God rejected him as king, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. It was probably horrible. It probably just, he was just probably, right, whether or not, he was defending himself, right? I mean, I can't even imagine in the dream me being like, wait, hold on, God, wait a minute, like, it wasn't even possible. Like, it's because Saul did not know God's ways. Saul did not care about God's ways. Saul was in it for himself. Now I remember. Saul, from the beginning, right? It's all a seed that we sow. Saul was sowing these seeds of disobedience, right? And it just led him down this path. He led himself down that path, and it just blew up in his face, right? But we don't want to be, like Pastor Eugene said in her post, like we don't want to be a person where God is like, I regret raising you up. I can't, man. Like just even hearing that, it just makes, I don't know, I can't even really put it into words. I'm just going to keep reading. Let's see. 13, respect the Lord your God and serve only him. You must use only his name to make promises. You must not follow other gods. You must not follow the gods of the people who live around you. The Lord your God is always with you, and he hates for his people to worship other gods. So, if you follow those other gods, and gods could be those issues in your heart that you don't want to let go, and you're willfully holding on to them with the death grip, if it's something that you don't want to let go because you're so offended and mad, or you feel like you're wronged or people are judging you, I mean, you have to know right now that is an idol. And whether you think you're in the wrong or you're in the right or not, you're not in the right. Because if you're holding on to something out of anger or hate or offense, as I just said, it's an idol. And God says he hates for his people to worship other gods. And that's why I say that if you're holding on to offense, or if you're angry at the pastors or some situation at God, don't say that you know God's ways. It's better that you just, zip it. Just let's see it in action, right? Let's all the talk. Let's just see it. Let's actually see some action, right? Because a lot of people like to talk, but few people actually do it. And that is so real. That's why Nike says just do it. Because, right, it's so common, but I bet you at the time, I can't remember the Phil McKnight or something like that, the owner of Nike. Phil something, I don't know. The owner of Nike. So I bet you at the time, they had so many people competing with him, and he was like, you know what? I'm tired of all this. I'm just going to do it. And he did it. And now he's where he is. So, like I said, if you have offense or anger or whatever issues in your heart and you're having such a hard time letting them go, know that that is an idol. Just know that. Know that that's an idol. And the fact that you don't want to let it go, you're automatically in the wrong. It's like, there's no question about it. I'm going to keep reading. So the second half of 15. So if you follow those other gods, the Lord will become very angry with you. He will destroy you from the face of the earth. Like I said earlier, you must not test the Lord your God like you tested him at Massa. You must be sure to obey the commands of the Lord your God. You must follow all the teachings and laws he has given you. You must do what is right and good, what pleases the Lord. Then everything will go well for you, and you can go in and take the good land that the Lord promised your ancestors, and you will force out all your enemies, just as the Lord said. So I want you guys to get in this habit. Now, every time I get a word from any revival or anything, very rarely does God say anything like, oh, you're going to do this, or I think maybe once that's happened to me in like 5-6 years. I got a word, and it was very general, like, oh, you're going to do this, and it was very, very general. But like 99% of the time, I go up there, and God says, do this. I want you to do this. I need you to do this. I need you to stop doing this. And I'm God thinking like, wow, why is God always like giving me instructions and like, for a minute it was a little deflating. I'm like, man, like, but then as time grew, I became very appreciative of it because that's all that matters. What else matters? Whatever God has set out to do, it's going to happen anyways, as long as I follow the instructions. So God just cut out all the rest and said, hey, just follow these instructions. And I'm very thankful for that. And I remembered this when I got a word that in my mind was more encouraging, but it was basically, hey, you're gonna do this and this. And then like it was like 90% of what he said was like, you're gonna do this and this, and then like 10% was like, but I need you to do this. And like my mind completely erased everything else that I was going to do, and I just remembered the 10%. So I want you guys to do that. When Pastor gives you guys instructions, when revival's coming up, when you get a word through Pastor Kim, right? It's nice to hear nice things that encourage us, they lift us up, right? But the most important thing is following the instruction. Otherwise, none of that stuff's going to happen. And so when you read the Bible, right, God's like, we kind of take white out when we're reading, and we kind of erase out like, oh, this if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And then we kind of like to read God's going to take me into the land he promised, and I'm going to be so blessed and rich, and oh man, it's so great. And that's all, we kind of like daydream about that, but we forget like how to actually even get there is through the instruction. So when you guys read, or when Pastor gives you instruction, or you get a word through Pastor Kim or through Pastor Eugene or anybody else, I want you to turn your frequency on to, I want you to turn the frequency in your ear that's like tuned in for instruction. I want you to turn that dial all the way up, right? And it's good. Like I said, you might get some encouraging words. Awesome. Keep that in your heart. Treasure it. But really take seriously when it comes to instruction. It's so important because, like I said, it's your foundation. God brought you here to work for him and serve him. When you work for somebody, they say, hey, do this, and you do it. You don't say to your boss, you don't know nothing, boss. No, you do it because you're like, okay, I understand. This guy knows more than me. He's been here, whether he's been here longer or not, he has the authority, and he's telling me what to do. And so I got to listen. And so that's what you do, right? But when it comes to God, like I said last time, all of a sudden, we want to just like, well, God will take care of me. Well, if I mess up this time, if I blow up on this person, I'll have another chance. How do you know? How do you know? Just because you've gotten 1,605,291 chances, what thinks you're going to get the 292nd chance? And don't count on it, right? It's like people, like Pastor said, they study or they don't study. And they just float through class and float through the semesters. And then, I've seen people like this in college. They don't show up to school. Total disrespect for the professor. The professor is teaching us for the betterment of our future. And these guys just don't even show up. Sure, you miss a class, 2 or 3, throughout the semester, it's fine. But, these guys would literally not show up for like 8 weeks. And they would just come in at the midterm, and they come in at the final, and they would bank everything on, I'm going to pass my midterm. Then they come in with that cockiness, like, well, I'm going to pass my midterm. Why do I need to be here? Even though I have a 30% in the class, like, obviously I'm going to pass my final. So why do I need to come to the whole semester? Pride, right? Those people failed. Very, very rarely did those people even pass. And I'm telling you right now, it's not going to happen in God's kingdom. Because 99% is an F, as we know. You got to give 100% to God. And so we can't come in here thinking that, like we know something, even though let's say somebody's been here for a long time. I can't be like, well, I've served God, so like, you know how much I've done for God? Like, come on, God. You got me, God, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? People treat God like this. Was God like a bartender? We treat God like a bartender? Oh, yeah, God, let me get my drink. We're serving a God who made all the universe, all that dark space, everything that we don't even know what's out there in the foreseeable universe, like Deacon Lance had. And we're going to treat God like some kind of like butler? We don't know who we're serving then. And I think we need to take it a little more seriously as time goes on, because it's not always going to be, yes, it's fun, it's amazing, it's joyful to even be in a place like this, and that God chose us to be here, but like, at some point, things are going to get more serious, and that's already in that upward trajectory. And I've brought this up many times, but when I was at Zoom, when we were a private company, oh man, people could get away with everything. Even stuff that was bad. There was some sexual harassment things that happened, and they kind of just swept it under the rug. But as soon, I'm not even kidding, to the day, as soon as we went public, they were playing no games. They were like, oh, you're the #1 salesperson and you did this? Fired. Oh, you're the president of the company and you're going to treat your subordinates like that? Fired. They were just cutting people like nothing. It was crazy. We'd come in the morning and I have an email. Hey, just want to let you guys, from our CEO, just want to let you guys know that so-and-so was was an employee with us. They're no longer employed here. Just wanted to keep you guys updated. And we're like, wow. And these are like high-ranking people, right? So I think of God like that. I think of God like, God doesn't care how much you put in, how prestigious you are. How are we? We're like a piece of sewage compared to God. We think we're all nice because we got nice clothes and we got nice things, we got a nice car, but like, that's just like, God can't even see it in his hand. It's so small. He's just like, He could just, right? I mean, we gotta understand more who we're serving, like I'm saying. So the only thing I keep thinking about is like, do we even know who we're serving? Because if we did, then we wouldn't even tolerate this nonsense in our lives. It's like God said to that church in Revelation, you tolerate Jezebel, right? Jezebel isn't just like, oh, that person that's being a Jezebel. It's that Jezebel, that thing inside of you that's so controlling and grasping onto the things you don't want to let go. That's the Jezebel. Oh, that pastor. Oh, that boss. Oh, God, you let me go through this. Oh. I mean, you have to know that if you're thinking like that, Jezebel is thriving in you right now. And if we're not, we gotta sever it. We gotta cut that off. Like it's like a snake, right? When a snake is moving around, you could literally go to a snake and get like a machete and chop that thing in half, and it'll still live. You have to literally obliterate that snake. You would have to chop it up into 50 pieces. You'd have to burn it. Right? Like, you would have to totally destroy that. That's like the sin in us. When it comes to things inside of us, we want to take it lightly. But if it's, I gotta get this piece of clothing because it's so great. We'll spend so much time looking at it. It's hours shopping, or we'll, I got to make sure I look good, and, I got to put on if I'm a guy, I got to get dressed, or if I'm a girl, I got to put on the makeup, and, we spend all this time, but when it's like this sin inside of us, we just we almost just kind of glance at it like, and we kind of just like keep going. Like, we should be like in there with, when you're younger, you're gonna laugh at this one. I had lice when I was younger, and my mom and HD Ellen and even HD Daniel, they would be going through my hair with a little lice comb, and they'd be like through strands of hair, trying to find those little eggs. That's how we should be for stuff when it comes to God, right? Yes. It's nice to be blessed. It's nice to have nice things. It's nice to go nice places. It's nice to, right? It's nice to enjoy a lot of things. But that needs to come second to God. And we have to remember that, because if not, we're going to forget, right? And that's what God is saying in Deuteronomy 6. Don't forget. Because a lot of us in here, like Pastor says, just because you are here on this soil, you're going to be blessed, right? Even if you're somebody who's kind of just floating along, sure, you might get a measure of blessing, right? But at some point, God's going to come for that fruit, and you better have it. You got to have it. Otherwise, God's going to come to you in a way that he came to in my dream, right? Right? God's given us many, many chances right now in training, but we don't want to get to a point where God's like, you know what? Like King Saul, like, you know what? Go ahead, forget you. Or even like Paul said, well, I can't remember the name of the guy, but he's like Hermogenes or something like that. I was reading it today. But basically, Paul had somebody that was under him, and they basically, you could look at it as like it was like a branch church or whatever they had open in some area, and the person just totally just went against Paul, and Paul was like writing in his letter, I cared for this and that brother, but they totally came against me, so I handed him over to Satan, and I was like, dang. But I mean, that's real though, because at some point of time in the future, God's just not going to let you keep putting him on the cross, right? He's not going to let the crucifixion keep happening over and over again. right? At some point, he's like, you know what? You got to learn your lesson. And it's honestly mercy for you to even wake up and be saved. Oh, man, I forgot where I'm at. Oh, 20. Deuteronomy 6, verse 20. In the future, your children might ask you, the Lord our God gave you teaching laws and rules. What do they mean? Then you will say to them, we were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt, but the Lord brought us out of Egypt with his great power. The Lord did great and amazing things. We saw him do these things to the Egyptian people, to Pharaoh, and to the people in Pharaoh's house. He brought us out of Egypt so that he could give us the land that he promised our ancestors. The Lord commanded us to follow all these teachings. We must respect the Lord our God. Then he will always keep us alive and doing well, as we are today. If we carefully obey the whole law, all instructions, exactly as the Lord our God told us to, he will say that we have done a very good thing. Right? It's like Pastor said yesterday. He's like, all I care about is as long as I make it to heaven and I hear the words, good job, my faithful servant, right? That's what it's saying here. If you carefully obey all instructions and you're following the leader behind God, you're going to make it home. And God's going to say, hey, you've done a good thing. Good job, my faithful servant, right? So I want to remind you guys, I kind of want to recap everything, right? In the dream, when God said, what, were you not afraid? It was like I didn't know what exactly he was talking about, but when he said that, I was like instantly like, went through a microscope and I was just looking at everything like, oh my gosh, what'd I do? Okay, that, okay, that, like I started examining every micro thing I could possibly imagine in my whole life. And I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like I didn't, I'm not treating God with respect. I'm not fearing God. And it's such a scary thing. Like I wish I could like tell you guys how it really felt, but it's impossible. There's no way to know. All I can do is just tell you, And I'm very grateful that I had this experience so that you guys can know, like, how real it really is. Like we think, we kind of forget, like, we're just floating in and out of church. But we forget, like, why we're actually here. And I was reading something today, and it said that, Paul wrote a letter, and he was like, yeah, those type of people, they're just following God so they can get rich. And, like, I read it, like, 3 times. I was like, wow, like, it's very interesting, Like, he's like, yeah, those kind of people, they, they don't want to take care. He was talking about the widows. That's what it was. Right? The widow could be, it's not a physical widow like in today's time. It's talking about like spiritual widow, like somebody who has lost God, right? You could even be in the church and be a spiritual widow because you're like running away, right? If you run away from home, right, we'll use the term orphan. If you run away from home, you are now not part of that family anymore. You are on your own. You're like an orphan in a sense. So you could be sitting here right now as an orphan because you are constantly running away from God spiritually. You're forgetting God, right? And Paul is saying, like, those type of people, they don't want to work. He says this. I don't want to go look for it, but he said, those type of people, they don't want to look. Those type of people that have families at home, but they don't want to take care of them. Those type of people have the means to help somebody, but they don't help somebody. And he says, because they refuse to work, because they refuse to take care of the family at home, right? Doing something that is hard, right? Like, if we don't want to take care of somebody at home, right? It could be my physical family. It could be my spiritual family. Oh, what if, Pastor had me go to the DMV to help Joshua Hopes with something? What if I'm like, you know what? I don't feel like doing that. That little thing right there, that's a seed planted. And what Paul said, those type of people, because they don't want to work, because they don't want to take care of their family, they're not going to be able to do a good thing. He's basically saying they won't even be able to hear. They won't even be able to obey. They won't even be given the ability to. I mean, that is scary. So he's saying, you know what? If you're going to blatantly go against instructions, then fine, be deceived. Any further instructions you get, you won't even have the ability to obey. Right? And then maybe you're on a path even 6 months down the road and you're thinking like, what the heck happened? How am I here right now? How is my life so messed up? And you won't even have the ability to understand why that is. It's because you've sown so many different seeds of disobedience. So many different things of, you know what, I'm not going to take that seriously. I don't want to go to work. I'm supposed to help, my husband in this way, or I'm supposed to help my wife in this way. But it's just too hard. Who could even do that? Who could even be married? This is ridiculous, right? Like, they could be making up any kind of excuse, and then they expect like God's going to give them the gift of obedience. We have to remember that obedience is a gift from God. You can have the anointing of obedience. I remember that post from Pastor Eugene years ago. But you have to show God that God's not going to give you a gift if he can't trust you with the small things, right? The small things are the little, like I said, the foundation, the stuff that doesn't look so great and sexy, right? It's the stuff that nobody wants to do. It's the stuff that's boring. It's the stuff that looks like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to take care of this person? Why insert anything that you don't feel like doing? Insert anything that is an instruction you got and you don't want to do it. And then we wonder down the line, people say this sometimes. Well, God, why didn't you tell me? Well, like, you could have stopped me, God. You could have, if I was going to go down this path, God, like, you could have, like, cut me off, or you could have stopped me. So, but what those people don't understand is that God has sent them so many lifeguards, so many lifeboats, and they didn't want to grab onto it. And so now they're in a path where they can't even see a way out anymore. They're so deceived to the point where God's like, you know what? I'm not even going to give you the ability to obey anymore because your heart is so hardened against me. And so to wrap everything up, I just want to remind you guys that yes, things are it's amazing to be here, and it's a joyful thing, and it's a huge blessing. But at the same time, we're here for a purpose, right? We have to remember why we're here. God has us here on a mission, and that mission might look like it's taking a long time, but we're walking on that road right now. And right now, there's no battlefields out there. We're still walking on the training road, but we have to take the times now very seriously so that later in the future, when God takes us to higher places, we don't get deceived. We don't get corrupted. We don't forget God, because God could take us to a place where we forget who God is. And that's not what we want, because then God will come and say, what, you weren't afraid when I told you to be careful? You weren't afraid when I said, remember my commandments? You just took it nonchalantly? So going forward, right, if you get an instruction, I mean, that's really the basis of it. That's what we have that's what we can deal with right now. If you guys get an instruction, take it seriously. God has placed you here. Be thankful and show God you're thankful by obeying these instructions and listening to him. And then God won't have to come in a way that you don't want in the future. And so I just want to encourage you guys to just, enjoy serving God, but at the same time, take it a little more seriously, Amen?
Right, amen.